Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Eldred, and I'm with the Center for Best Practices. Thank you for joining us today for the Mobile Meals webinar. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items that I'd like to cover. First off, attendees are in listen-only mode. We will be recording this webinar today and will circulate the slides and webinar recording at a later date. Also, we will take questions at the end of the webinar. Please use the question box for your questions, and we will read them out loud or respond to them individually. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my colleague Derek Lambert to start the webinar.
Hello everyone, this is Derek Lambert, Program Manager with No Kid Hungry Share Our Strength Center for Best Practices, and we are excited to be here today to talk about mobile meals and opportunities to identify and implement creative solutions to connect with children and families. This is an hour-long webinar, and we are glad that you've joined us. First off, I want to give thanks to our sponsor, the Arby's Foundation, whose support makes these webinars possible, and the focus that we have on summer meals and planning for programs throughout the year. Looking at the agenda today, we're going to talk about what are mobile meals, the what, the why, and the how. We're going to hear stories from the field from some great speakers who run excellent programs, innovative programs around the country. We're going to review the Mobile Meals Playbook, a resource available to all of you on the Center for Best Practices website. And then we're going to have time for questions and answers at the end. Want to give a big shout out and welcome to our speakers today. We will hear from Jody, Brian, Clint, and Scott in just a few minutes. But just want to say we are thankful for their time and their commitment to set aside this part of their day to share their stories. But first, let's start with a brief review of the what, the why, and the how of summer meals. When we think about summer meals, at its root, we're really actually talking about the same thing that we're talking about with other meal delivery mechanisms in the summertime, connecting meals to kids where they live, learn, and play. That's the goal of mobile meals. What we're doing is we're just using some different tactics to reach kids. Three primary strategies that we see in the approach to mobile meals are meals to sites, transporting meals to sites, transporting children to sites, and then some of what we've heard a lot about, and we're going to review as well, the kind of innovative mobile sites. Let's start at the top. Looking at transporting meals to sites, we're really looking at the opportunity to pack meals with proper equipment, coolers or hot boxes, and send them to sites on fixed route buses or private delivery vehicles. Another option that we'll hear from today when we talk to Clint over in Oklahoma, Clint McKnight, is to devise a hub and spoke model in which community partners with food storage space serve as a central storage hub or staging hub for several sites or spokes that pick up meals from the hub and bring the meals to their sites. That's one model. A second approach is transporting children directly to sites where meals are served. We see fixed route service where what many riders consider when they think of public transit, which is a bus traveling a regular route with fixed stops and scheduled times that are consistent from day to day. These are more common in urban areas where the population is concentrated enough to fill a bus that runs a regular route. We'll hear from Scott Gillies in Huntsville, Alabama today about this approach. Some other options that we won't cover as in-depth today, but that are something to consider, are demand response services. Those are call-to-ride services where riders request a ride, and a transit provider builds a route each day in response to demand. Routes can be tailored to meet a specific demand across a wide geographic area. If a rider has a regular request, such as a daily ride to a summer meal site, the transit provider can schedule that rider for regular pickup. This is something that we can often see, and it's worth exploring, especially where you have rural transportation agencies where the delivery or the transportation service may not be a fixed route, but they are able to provide service to folks that communicate their needs in advance. And then we also have a shared or purchased vehicle, whereby in utilizing vehicles, we're able to provide transportation to other programs by redirecting these resources to organizations that may not have access to a vehicle, but are using vehicles that another organization already owns, such as a school bus or a passenger van. It's also possible in some cases to purchase a new vehicle, and like I said, to partner with organizations that are willing to lend their vehicles to transport children to summer meal sites. Partners for shared or purchased vehicles can include churches, community action agencies. These folks can provide vehicles and sometimes even volunteer drivers. And then we have mobile sites, and we think of the mobile food truck or retrofitted buses, where sponsors use vans, buses, or retrofitted vehicles to prepare or deliver meals, then serve meals at a congregate site located within or near the vehicle itself. These vehicles may be set up at sites in multiple locations each day, and they are an opportunity to provide a hyper-local food delivery model that allows sponsors to reach children and families in locations where traditional fixed sites may not be feasible to operate. One reminder as we get into this topic today is that we want to make sure everyone knows that all Summer Food Service Program and Seamless Summer Option program and local food safety requirements continue to apply when implementing mobile meal solutions. In addition, federal reimbursement rates for breakfast, lunch, supper, and snack remain the same. So when we think about budgeting and planning and the logistics of operating these programs, it's really imperative to keep that in mind. Why do we talk about a mobile meal solution? Well, Share Our Strength has conducted research, and what we found in conversations with families is that 80% of children are at home during the summer months. Almost half of families say that free summer meals aren't necessarily offered at a convenient location near to them where they can easily access. And more than a third, 38%, cited transportation specifically as a barrier to accessing summer meals. So that's one reason we think about mobile meals as a solution to reach those children and families wherever they are in the summer months. Some locations that work well as sites are not ideal as food prep facilities. So some of the places where we can more easily prepare food for service are not the places where they make the most sense to be served. And sometimes summer locations that are prime spots for sites, they may be different from those during the school year where infrastructure is already in place. These are some of the key reasons why we look to mobile meals as a key strategy in the summer meals programming. It's also an opportunity for partnership. Collaborative planning is a key strategy in summer meals, and mobile meals represent an opportunity to translate the work of collaborative planning, which we covered in our January webinar, and to translate it into tangible outcomes to reach children who otherwise wouldn't have access to summer meals. The need for staff and resources to sustain mobile programs can help galvanize community actors to get involved and invest themselves in efforts to support and expand programs. If your collaborative planning work group is looking for a project around which to join forces, around which to bring in new actors and partners, reaching out to see if program sponsors need support with mobile meals may be a place to get started. So when you're thinking about projects or opportunities to support sponsors through collaborative planning, this may be one area to consider. And then we're going to look at the how of mobile meals. This is a little bit of a preview. We'll return to this later during the webinar. But when looking at our mobile meals playbook, which is the resource that we'll share later, there are some very key areas that we want to cover. We want to help folks, we want to help sponsors gather information about different models with mobile meals, making sure they're asking the right questions relevant to their circumstances and their situation. We want to help you get ready with effective budget planning and logistical planning for meal preparation and delivery. And we want to give folks the best chance to reach children and to operate sustainably by implementing proven best practices, which we'll begin to hear about today from some of our sponsors. We'll review specific resources in the Mobile Meals Playbook a bit later, but for now, let's hear from our invited guests as they share stories from the field. So once again, we've gone through some of the mobile meals basics. We're going to get into our stories from the field, and I just want to give everyone kind of an outline of where we're at in the country today. We have sponsors in order from Anne Arundel County, Maryland, Fredericksburg, Virginia, from Central Oklahoma, based in Oklahoma City, and from Huntsville, Alabama. Our speakers today are Jody Risa, Brian Kiernan, Clint McKnight, and Scott Gillies. We're going to start today with Jody Risa, and let me introduce her to you folks. Jody is a registered dietitian and supervisor of food and nutrition services for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Jody received her master's degree in marketing in 1997, her bachelor's degree in dietetics in 1987. She is active in state and national associations, serving as a chairperson for many committees. Jody has over 30 years of experience as a registered dietitian, with passion for healthy eating and motivation to encourage healthy lifestyles for all students and staff that are evident in the day-to-day operations in all Anne Arundel County Public Schools. And Jody, we're going to pass it over to you, and thanks so much for coming to speak with us today about the work that you've been doing up in Maryland.
Thank you so much, Derek, and good afternoon to everybody. Like Derek said, I'm Jody Risi, and I am the Supervisor of Food and Nutrition Services for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about Anne Arundel County. We are the 5th largest school system in the state of Maryland, and we're among the top 50 across the country. Our student enrollment is about 81,500, and we have approximately 32% of our students are eligible for free and reduced price meals. Our projected revenue for this year is about $29 million, and last summer we served 82,260 meals, a continued increase that we see each and every year with the addition of mobile meals and some future enhancements that we're going to talk about. Next slide. How did Anne Arundel County begin mobile meals? And we started many years ago, and we worked with a principal who in his district or in his feeder system, he was able to go out into the community. It was the western part of our community, and he met with his families, his students in their homes. And it was so successful for what it did for their enrichment, for their education, as well as their discipline issues, tardiness issues, attendance. He felt we really need to mimic that with our mobile meals. So instead of having students come to us at his schoolhouse, we coordinated our efforts with the bus, and that's the picture there. It's one of our Anne Arundel County school buses, and we went out into the community exactly where he pointed us. Large amounts of students in the community with their either parents or not during the school day, but we were able to reach them. The first year was so successful, we added a second bus, and we chose another part of our county. Not as successful with our partners and our apartment complexes, so we changed the location again after a third year, saying let's keep the West County. We're going to add another bus to a higher free and reduced price area in the northern tier of our county. Next slide. We also introduced some van service, and this is a picture of our van. So not only do we deliver vans with our meals into the community, we also partnered with Recreation and Parks. We have both city and county Recreation and Parks folks, and we knew they had the students there. They had our children enrolled in summer camps. There was some aquatic centers, etc. So we knew we could go to them at their location and provide them the breakfast and or lunch. We used the vehicle in conjunction with one of our partners here at Anne Arundel County, so it was an exchange. They had it, it wasn't being used in the summer, and we had a need for it. And in the case with the van, we're also able to supply the driver through food and nutrition services. The point of sale, recording all the meals is all done through our staff. Next slide, please. This is, I know this is hard to see, but this is something that we've done with our Department of Health, and this really showed our cross-agency collaboration. And we mapped our food deserts, we mapped our SNAP participants, we looked at schools, the little red schoolhouses are all of our schools that are 50% free or reduced meals, so they were eligible for summer meals, and then the little blue dot is all of our summer meal locations. We also looked at farmers markets because we were very interested in opening a farmers market on one of our school sites or a mobile site. And as you can see, the alignment was quite remarkable. The yellow overlay with that food desert and then all of our splattering of our summer meals as well as where we would have our mobile meals aligned quite perfectly. So the Department of Health, along with our division here in Anne Arundel County, said, well, let's really go to work. What part of the county aren't we in with mobile? If you look to the far left of this map, that's where we started. The Western County just has those few little dots as well as with a food desert. We then went to the lower northern tier and then the top tier. And then last year we added the city of Annapolis, which is the far eastern district, which you could see with the next bunch of schoolhouses. In Lothian, that town in the far bottom is now going to be our new mobile meal site that we're going to add this year. They now have a school that is over 50%. Next slide, please. This is a picture of our North Aquatic Swim Center students. So clearly loving life, loving being off for the summer. We're happy that they're there exercising and having fun. We're also happy that we're providing them the nutritious lunch that they need to stay fueled for play. Next slide. Our summer meals and our mobile meals, we look at hot and cold options, preferably hot meals. We have tried cold meals in the past and they have not been as successful with our students. The equipment that we use is all equipment like the low boy storage or our coolers that we transport the food or storage bags are things that we would use throughout the year. So there was no additional equipment we needed, but we did develop a 2-week cycle with a lot of input from our staff on site, our students on site, as well as our fellow partners that have the different camps or different agencies that we're delivering to. A sample menu that we have is the General Tso chicken with rice. We put that in a takeout container, so it's cute, it's crafty, and it's a good vessel to deliver that meal. We do the chicken leg and corn muffin. Our favorite for the fruits are craisins or strawberries. We have a fresh fruit, a fresh vegetable every day. It is often local, which we work through one of our farmers market, and then the choice of milk. Next slide, please. As we looked into our mobile meals expansion, we said, how could we further expand that community partnership that we have with Rexon Park? And that's where we went to our school administration. And we said, what non-traditional sites do you have in your feeder area or in your transport area that you know is housing your children? So we looked at Kim's Karate and community centers, et cetera, to really extend that reach and go out into the community. And we also added the mobile site enhancements that are listed below. Next slide, please. This is just the most important part for us, is we really expanded our library partnerships. We looked at excess books. We give books away on our mobile meals, as well as our open sites and at summer camps. Next slide. Our budget management, we really capitalize on the staff that we have, the leverage that we have within a schoolhouse. So an open site would also be the site that's going to provide the resources for these hot meals to go out on our mobile meals. We look at community agency staff helping us wherever they can. The van and the bus sharing is no charge for us as food and nutrition services, because we're using buses that are not used during the summer, and vans also that are part of logistics in our mailroom that are not being used. We look at our menu consistency. We look at our partnerships, the participation to compare how much staff we have. And then we leverage all these assets that we currently have just to extend our reach and extend our participation. Next slide, please. So marketing has been really key for us. And how do we really reach those students? We begin with our menu. So our June menu, when it goes out to all of our parents, on the back side of the June menu, we list all of our mobile sites, the times that we're going to be in the community, as well as our open sites. Brand identification was key. So everything has similar colors. The Free Summer Meals banner is the look. We do everything that's blue with fruits and vegetables that are dancing, along with different students on the bottom. We do Connect Ed messages, cross-agency promotion. We have TV shows that promote it, as well as public service announcements. Next slide. This is just a little follow-up from some of our students. You could see they drew the nice bus, and they were thanking the staff that we had on site for a great lunch.
Thank you so much, Jody. And really a great program, and I was especially interested to hear about how you were, in partnership with the Department of Health, able to be really deliberate about expanding your summer site outreach into those areas with food deserts. And I'm sure we may have some more questions about the way in which you were so successful in doing that. So thank you so much for sharing, Jody. And we're going to turn it, yes, of course, thank you so much. And we're going to, at this time, turn it over to Brian Kiernan from the Fredericksburg Public School District. Brian was born and raised in New York, began a career in the restaurant food service industry in 1981. 1989, he relocated to Fredericksburg, Virginia to continue his career in the restaurant business, primarily with small business development. In 1995, he was introduced to the school nutrition services in Stafford County while also expanding his professional interests and training into building and facility management. He joined the Fredericksburg City Public School System in 2005, has served as their food services director since 2007. His focus has always been to bridge the gap between the private and public sectors by instilling a vision of quality to all services within school nutrition. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brian.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much, and I'm glad everybody could attend this very informational topic. Again, my name is Brian Kiernan. I'm the food service director for the Fredericksburg City Schools here in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Briefly about, you can go to the next slide, briefly about our program in our city. It's only about 10 square miles, 10 and a half square miles. It's about 28,000 residents. But with those residents, we've got about 57% free and reduced, which is always creates somewhat of a challenge. So what we see in our schools, in the public school sector, I've got about 36 to 3,700 students, and 20, 25, 27, 26, 2,700 a day eat lunch every day. So we kind of looked at the situation back in 2014 of why start this program. Well, the idea is because these children, what are they eating during the summer? And that's the question that I think we all come to as these programs develop. Next slide, please. When we look at the opportunities and how to create a program, back in 2014. We looked at the community, of course, and we've gotten all of our data really from the schools. It's easy enough to figure out the area of concerns that you may have in terms of children eating in the summer. However, when you're over 50%, of course, you have a tremendous freedom because the whole community itself, as a whole, is eligible for a free lunch or free meals. So it really gives us an opportunity to reach out to different parts of the community without just trying to focus on certain pockets, and that gives us a little bit more freedom. So ensuring the community buy-in, that's just about partnerships. It's really hard for everybody to understand the needs of children because not all people have children. They don't understand the process by which they get food. But if you get those community leaders out there, the city council, school board members, we did a lot of work with faith-based groups, and I really think that entitled us a little avenue of flexibility in the community to say this is really an important problem that we need to look at. As far as the strong financial management, when you run a school program, as anybody who does understands, you're working with nickels and dimes and really pennies. So when you can run a program similar to it and then just reduce your overhead, I think you automatically have this built-in financial management where you can purchase properly. You're not really coming in cold. I've got trained employees that are certified in food service, so they really know how to run the program and run the model. A plan to succeed is always the challenge, and everybody looks at succeeding as money, and it is. The reality is if you're going to tap on more tax dollars, you're going to add people to pay more tax dollars, you're always going to run into a problem. So really you want to have this program to run, to be self-sufficient, to run itself in terms of financial stability. The other real question is going to be adaptability. We have found that every day we make decisions to change something, tweak something a little bit different because the community is so diverse, the people are so diverse, whether it be ethnic backgrounds, whether it be financial, whether it be where they're eating and how they're eating and what times they're eating. You always have to make those changes as you see fit on a daily basis. Next slide, please. Building costs. This is something that we talk about all the time. When I was first starting it, we really tried to generate a feeling of, if this does fail, what can we do with these products? Well, as you can see, the graph shows that 50% of it went to equipment, and that's equipment that I currently use. 75% of that equipment I use daily during the school year. So I'm not buying equipment that is just going to be a waste of money, so to speak. I'm going to buy equipment that I can utilize during the school year. Number one, it's better for the equipment to be running, not to be sitting somewhere, and I'm utilizing it to expand other programs within my school nutrition program in the schools. So that really helps out to explain to somebody. The vehicle is the vehicle cost. We were able to find a vehicle with about 20% of the cost, the overall cost we were spending, so it's certainly justified. We utilize that vehicle anyway during the course of the year, and I've developed ways to utilize it to expand our program. Contracted labor is a reality. We probably spend less on contracted labor than most divisions would. And that really has more to do with my background in facilities management and my knowledge of electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. So that's an advantage we have, but certainly not something that you can't tap into in the community, whether it be a partnership or some kind of maintenance group or what have you. The miscellaneous are really the costs that at times you're not going to see paid back, or you're just going to lose at that time. Miscellaneous costs could be permits, the non-necessary items may be a PA system, a radio system, an awning, a non-contracted labor sometimes. I've done some work where I've had to bill the company appropriately because that's what you have to show costs for. Next slide, please. Then you get the word out. This is our first truck that we built back in 2014. This is a function at one of our schools, so I make it a priority whenever the weather breaks, and we've been very fortunate this year, so I've already had the truck out at a school function, cooking lunch for a school, so the kids identify themselves with that truck in the summer, and they know to look for that truck and where is it going to be. We've also already been out there. I've been on the radio already, in a radio morning show here at a local radio station in Fredericksburg, promoting the route that we're presenting this year, and promoting the fact that we're expanding it to 2 trucks. Next slide, please. This is a brief, synopsis of what we started in 2014. It's very simplified, almost elementary. It has 3 stops. It doesn't really include any of the things we did at our school sites because that was really small because we really didn't know, we didn't want to overextend ourselves at the start of it. Next slide, please. 2015, this is our next program that we had, and the key to this is the exploratory program right in the middle of the blue lettering. We were doing those meals out there to test the market to see what we can do in the future. Next slide, please. 2016, we utilized that exploratory time to see where else we can tweak it. We expanded our program in the schools, and we picked up a local city park with Park and Rec, a destination site so kids can come 7 days a week and get a lunch. Next slide, please. And this is our projected. Very similar to the last year's. However, some of those exploratory sites are in blue now, and they're going to come in 2 years later. Now that we tested the market, now we can go in and really furnish them with what they need based on what the data that we picked up going out and testing the market. Next slide, please. And the growth is the growth. It started off very slow, as it always does, and our projected is pretty clear, and it's probably on the minimal side based on what we think we can do and what's out there. Next slide, please. And here it is, the one on the left, slide on the left is the truck in action, and the slide on the right is the newer truck, the secondary truck that I'm building right now. It's a small abbreviated version. However, it'll have the same things that we'll offer in the big truck. We'll just be able to maneuver around town. We'll be able to add 3 sites to our, basically double our program, our footprint for next year. And I believe that should be all. Cost of expansion. The second truck is, of course, the costs are very much lower because of our experience in doing it. We have the bus that was handed down to us. It was taken off the road. It was not able to service children anymore, so we were able to utilize it at a very minimal cost, and all within the federal guidelines. And I believe that is all.
Thanks so much, Brian. Really, thanks so much for sharing and for talking about, as well, building up the program over time and testing out the market with some of the different, seeing where the interest and the possibility is for expansion. I'm sure folks may have some questions about that as we get into the question and answer session. So thanks again so much for sharing. I'm going to turn it over to the next slide and introduce Quint McKnight, Domestic Programming Manager at Feed the Children. Quint has been with Feed the Children for 3 years. He's a licensed professional counselor in the state of Oklahoma. He has previously worked in higher education as a professor and a staff member, and has worked to help nonprofits, churches, and universities implement community programming and feeding programs for over 10 years. He's going to share with us about the hub and spoke meal model that they have developed out in Oklahoma, and some of the best practices that they have gleaned. Welcome, Quint.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Derek. I'm convinced that Derek put me right here in the middle of the webinar in case anyone needed a nap, and he was hoping that my soothing tones of my Oklahoma accent would just help lull you right to sleep here. So I do want to talk to you briefly about Hub and Spoke and tell you a little bit about what we do at Feed the Children. If you want to go to that next slide, I guess first I'll explain a little bit about why what we would consider traditional mobile feeding, why that was not an option for us. We have lots of what we would consider urban feeding sites, and we felt very, very comfortable with how we were handling those, and those were running well, but we realized that we really were not able to reach our most rural communities, especially here in Oklahoma. And an example of that is kind of on the right of that slide. You will see that one of our routes that we would have made a mobile route would have encompassed 212 miles just one way. Obviously, that's over 400 miles round trip, and that would just not be feasible for us doing mobile feeding in that way. We service the entire state of Oklahoma, and we can get to a lot of places, but doing mobile feeding in that way just wouldn't work. So we wanted to expand on our strengths, and one thing that we had here at Feed the Children is a lot of community and local partners. We wanted to involve those people, and so we started getting into those local communities, meeting with people, holding almost community town halls, trying to see what their needs were and who some of our key volunteers were going to be, so that we could hopefully come up with something that would work for everyone. If you want to go to that next slide. So hub and spoke. We try to look at partners that would have cold storage or dry storage and look at everyone, not just people who are interested in being sites, but people who have some sort of storage capability that we can deliver meals to, and a lot of sites can come and pick up at that particular hub. We tried to look at what we are a vended program for the most part, so what our vendor capability would be to get to that hub, and then some of the volunteer capacity and commitment around that. What this really afforded us was some delivery and flexibility options. So for instance, if we had a hub 200 miles from our corporate facility here in Oklahoma City, and we could deliver out meals to them. Maybe they had cold storage, maybe they had dry storage. We could deliver meals to them for several different spokes, several different sites, and all of those sites can come pick up at that particular hub. We have a vendor that has a patented cold box, and that keeps those meals good for a lot of time, but we also had some hubs that we gave some refrigeration to, or help them obtain refrigeration to help us out in some of those ways. So we kind of looked at everything that we could. We also tried to look at these spokes as potentials to be their own sponsors. We weren't necessarily, we're not the kind of sponsor that is necessarily looking to have these spokes or sites forever, and we may train them for 2 to 3 years and then encourage them to be their own sponsor, and that way kind of expand the capacity, and that's what we call our mentor model. If you want to go to the next slide. Our model had some things that we thought worked really, really well. So hubs that had some refrigerated storage large enough for multiple sites, even if that is some residential refrigerators that we take the racks out of and are able to stack some meals in there, that worked really, really well as a hub. However, having a lead site to help coordinate multiple sites didn't work necessarily so well, and one of the reasons for that is we try to give a lot of supplemental product, not just our USDA meals, our lunch meals, our reimbursable meals. We try to give a lot of supplemental product in books and sports equipments to these sites, and having one of the sites kind of coordinate for other sites tended to create a little bit of jealousy, and so that didn't work so well. So we tried to supplement those lunch meals and make some privatized donated product for those kids to take home. That works really, really well. You have adults that are showing up to these sites. You know that a lot of times these kids are hungry, not at just times that they're at your site. So we try to provide that private donated product for those areas too. I've already explained to you about that mobile delivery for those rural areas and why that didn't work. But like I said, we tried to have town halls. We tried to get local community collaboration. I myself was not able to be in those communities every day of the week, but there's going to be some key people, your community champions out there, who are able to help you, and if you can get them on board and kind of tell them what you're doing, they're going to be your biggest champions. And also what didn't work for us there, a lot of our spokes did not have conferencing or a lot of reliable internet access, even sometimes computer access. And so we really had to work hard at being in those communities, at least for part of the time, to provide training and on-site help, even if it wasn't often, because we needed them to see us, and they didn't always have the technology. Next slide, please. This is just kind of the nuts and bolts of this. We tried to make sure that our hubs were within about 20 minutes of our sites. There's a very, very practical reason for this, is because we kept extra meals at those hubs in case we ever had a site that had a run on meals that day. We had a site that had a baseball team show up. And so if we're outside of that 20 to 30 minute window, it really doesn't work very well. And then what everybody always wants to know is what does this cost us? And I would just strongly suggest that you do a little bit of assessment on your own. Try to figure out what the needs are in that community. We have a needs assessment here at Feed the Children. We can actually share that with you if you would like. but we also do kind of a cost-benefit analysis in addition to that needs assessment to try to determine what our operating costs are going to be. I would strongly encourage all of you out there that are thinking about doing something like a hub-and-spoke model to do a needs assessment and do a little bit of cost-benefit. But you know, you can always, I'm sure our contact information will be available after this, and please feel free to contact me if you have some questions about this. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Clint. I appreciate you talking about the importance of collaboration and really providing that support to partners in the field, and also the value of an assessment to make sure that, you know, sponsors are in a place to operate these programs, which we'll get into in just a bit as we review the Mobile Meals Playbook after we hear from Scott. But before then, I really am excited to introduce Scott Gillies, who is the Transportation Coordinator with the Huntsville City Schools in Alabama. Scott is a lifelong resident of Huntsville. He graduated from the University of Alabama, Huntsville in 1985 with a BSBA degree with majors in marketing and management. He worked for the McDonald's Corporation for 31 years, starting as crew person and finishing that career as the Director of Operations over 15 restaurants. He has been in pupil transportation for 9 years, 5 years as the GM for Durham School Services in Huntsville, and 4 years as the Transportation Coordinator for Huntsville City Schools. And he's going to be able to tell us about some of the different innovative methods and partnerships that they have implemented to make meals more accessible to kids in Huntsville. Scott, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Derek. Again, this is Scott Gillies. I'm the Transportation Coordinator with Huntsville City Schools here in Alabama. We've got 36 schools and approximately 24,000 students here in Huntsville. We began our summer meal program in 2013. We've served more than 100,000 meals in some summers, which is pretty awesome. We are currently going to use 11 sites this summer for our summer feeding program. 9 of those sites will serve breakfast and lunch. 2 of them will serve breakfast and supper. Sites are located at schools, but also near activity centers, daycares, things like that. Some of the groups that we cater to are Boys and Girls Clubs, Girls Inc., local churches, neighborhood rec centers, as well as Huntsville City Schools summer programs such as summer school and extended learning classes. Next slide, please. We've got 2 key partnerships with our summer feeding program. The first one is with the City of Huntsville. We began this partnership with the City of Huntsville shuttle bus system in the first year that we began the summer feeding program, which was 2013. What we did was we developed a summer bus pass that people could use to ride the shuttle bus free of charge. The first week of the summer program was a grace period where people did not have to have the pass. What they would do is ride the bus to a school, and they would get a bus pass from the site that they ate a meal at, and then they could use that pass for the rest of the summer. This partnership is good PR for the bus system for the City of Huntsville. Of course, they're mentioned in any publications, any press that we get for the summer feeding program. Also helps raise awareness of meals and transportation. Existing relationships that we already had with the City of Huntsville helped facilitate this partnership. One thing that we did, and you can see a small map there on the right-hand side, the shuttle bus system has 12 routes around the City of Huntsville. We located routes that went near our summer feeding sites, and we had the GIS person at the City of Huntsville develop this map. She came up with a unique idea of putting the sites on the map there with a bacon and eggs icon showing for breakfast sites, a hamburger icon for lunch sites, and a plate of spaghetti for evening sites. I took these posters and took them around town to the shuttle bus shelter sites and put these posters up to where people could see where the summer feeding sites were. Next slide, please. The second key partnership we have is with our bus contractor. Durham School Services is in their 9th year of service with Huntsville City Schools, providing our bus service. It's kind of unique in Alabama. There's only 4 contracts in Alabama for school bus service. Most of the other school systems run their own bus service. They run about 25 to 30 routes during the summer for us for summer school, extended learning, things like that. since the district pays a per diem rate for bus service, it doesn't cost us anything extra to use these buses to deliver children from daycares and such to the summer meal sites. That's normally just for the month of June when we have summer school. During the month of July, the number of buses will cut down to about 10. The nice thing about Durham is that they donate 2 to 3 of these routes every year. And of course, Huntsville City Schools pays for the others that are used during the month of July. The contractor operates at a reduced rate. For the most part, they just cover their costs during the summer to help partner with this. This ensures year-round revenue for the contractor, and it also provides steady employment for 30 to 40 bus drivers out of 170 that drive during the normal school year. One thing that was started last year, Durham School Services donated an old bus to Huntsville City Schools, which we had retrofitted to deliver meals to sites. Not a food truck, it was just a delivery vehicle, and our child nutrition program designated sites that we were going to deliver meals to. Next slide. Some of the best practices, of course, this leverages existing relationships and infrastructure using the bus service that the City of Huntsville has and also the buses that Durham has. The bus contractor loves to keep their buses running year-round. The second thing there, conduct outreach that benefits all partners. It's good PR for Durham School Services, it's good PR for City of Huntsville, and definitely good PR for Huntsville City Schools. There's also, it helps us explore low or no-cost options for increased service. We pay per bus per day to Durham, so we try to use those buses to the maximum every day, and using them for summer feeding is great. It helps consider expansion opportunities that build on existing services. The July routes, there's not as many customers in the month of July, but we do keep the service going year-round where we're able to provide meals year-round. And then the last thing is to be open to new opportunities as they arise, such as the donated bus. We're looking at better ways to use that bus this year, and I'm sure that that will improve as the years go along. And thank you for having me, Derek.
Scott, thank you so much. You guys have done some really great work working with the City of Huntsville to raise awareness about the availability of sites, connecting that to the existing transportation infrastructure, and then really the partnership with Durham School Services and how that has grown and developed to allow you folks to reach more kids and to transport more children to sites is really encouraging to hear. So thanks so much for sharing, and I'm sure we may likely to have some questions about that at the end. So I want to thank everyone, all of our speakers, for sharing their stories from the field. So we've talked about the what, the why, and the how of mobile meals. We've heard from these really just, sponsors that are doing incredible path-breaking work in their communities to reach more kids with summer meals and to assess and reassess their programs year to year to see how they can continue to serve children and families wherever they may be. And now I want to turn now and look at a resource review that we have here with Share Our Strength Mobile Meals Playbook that is something that we can all use and is really geared toward the entire audience to help you folks think about what elements of these different stories could apply in your communities and how we could collectively think about these programs in ways that make it possible to maximize the impact of the resources that we have. First, I want to recognize that this tool was created, the Mobile Meals Playbook, with generous support from the Arby's Foundation as part of the Schools Out, Foods In initiative. We'd also like to thank the Arby's Foundation for their generous support of this webinar series and so much of the work that we do around summer meals. Also want to thank Community Wealth Partners team for conducting research and analysis around best practices in mobile meals and the program design and contributing to the development of this playbook. Also, I have a link to the Center for Best Practices website there for those who may not have visited before. The No Kid Hungry Center for Best Practices that is hosting today's webinar provides tools and resources needed to help program sponsors, nonprofits, elected officials, and educators achieve success in fighting childhood hunger. And today's playbook that we're going to review is one of many resources available to help partners increase access to summer meals. We also have resources there that are related to school breakfast and after-school meals for folks that work in that area. Just one quick note that the Mobile Meals Playbook is located in the Sponsor Center section of the Center for Best Practices website, not the Summer Meals section, but the Sponsor Center. So please make a note of that as you navigate toward the site. And let's have a look today at the table of contents of the playbook, where really we're going to talk about, looking at what mobile meals are, mobile meals in action, is mobile meals right for you, tools to help plan your program, and then also a review of best practices for mobile operation. That's what we'll look at today. I just want to make a note as well. As Stephanie said earlier, we're going to send out this slide deck after the webinar has completed within 2 days. All blue hyperlink text that you see in these slides will take you to the relevant section of the playbook. So as you're looking at this resource and looking at the slides, know that you can click on all of these hyperlinked areas and it will take you to the relevant portion of the site that we've reviewed. So looking at the first section about mobile meals, this is really just an introduction and an overview of the tool. It provides a background on mobile meals, the need, reviews the need for creative solutions to reach children and families, as well as resources available through the playbook. It's very similar in many ways to the themes that we covered at the beginning of today's webinar. It also includes a program checklist, which is, you can see it there on the right, a screenshot from part of the website. It's a quick reference tool that previews many elements covered by other parts of the toolkit in greater depth, such as general planning, budget, delivery, logistics, and evaluation. While not every item will apply equally to all sponsors, it will help ensure that you've considered critical factors to success. The second section is about mobile meals in action, and it really provides a range of case studies so that you can look and to see the diversity of mobile meals programs that exist and have successfully operated to serve children. These programs, as you have probably already heard today, can look really different, from the types of meals served and the vehicles used to the geographies in which they operate. Examples include sponsors in the states of Nebraska, Texas, Tennessee, Arkansas, and New York City. So in fact, examples from places that are even in addition to the ones you've heard today. You can also, as you go through the site of the Mobile Meals in Action, you can click on the hyperlink text of each sponsor that's highlighted for in-depth information on each provider and their mobile meals operations, including their geographic focus, their primary delivery model for the program, the number of meals they were able to serve, their meal format, whether hot or cold, self-prep or vended, and best practices and insights from each instance of mobile meals operation. So the Mobile Meals in Action is great to get an idea of the variety of programs and identify those that may most closely match the situation in which you find yourself. The third section is Mobile Meals Right for You. It is really an opportunity to think about and dive into some market research, establishing the need and the desire for mobile meals in the community, looking at existing options for traditional sites, locating geographic areas for targeting for mobile meals, identifying whether locations are eligible by looking at school or census tract data, and determining the following by asking folks who know in the community. For example, by asking the right questions. How many children live in a community or in a specific part of a community? How many children there already receive summer meals? Are children already concentrated or specific locations or communities where meals can be served? And what, if any, barriers exist to reaching children in those areas? So these are the kinds of questions that you sometimes have to get to the bottom of. And there, as we've heard from previous speakers, there are often people and entities in the communities who can help you get that information. So rather than having to find it all yourself, sometimes it's really about connecting with the right partner who can help you out. Talking about, in this section, establishing organizational readiness for operations. Are you or your staff and your program willing and able to commit resources, financial or otherwise, to this effort? Do you have experience operating federal nutrition programs? Or are you planning to establish strong relationships with organizations that can help you achieve your goals in operating federal nutrition programs? And also, critically, is there buy-in from staff and partners to operate sustainably over a period of years? We look at, in this section, financial feasibility with starting questions to help you get ahead with planning, such as considering the full cost of mobile operations by looking at staffing, vehicle and equipment costs, assessing whether additional funds will be needed beyond the federal reimbursement rate, and in the event that that's the case, thinking about a plan for securing additional dollars, such as fundraising, donations, granting or budget appropriations from the relevant authority, reducing costs where possible through bulk purchasing, vendor contracts, limiting food waste, accurate meal forecasting, and transportation efficiencies. For example, the per diem routes that Scott got into, or perhaps finding more efficient routes. One tool we also want to really highlight is our Mobile Meals Calculator, which allows you, by the use of an Excel workbook, to cost out your program, including key operational assessments and budget calculations. This spreadsheet is available on the website and is available for download and use. We've got a couple of screenshots here that we've taken from the interactive tool. On the left, you have set assumptions that include necessary equipment, operations, and reimbursement associated with your specific program by entering information relevant to your plans. And on the right, a summary and scenario planning that really gets into looking at the sustainability of the budget you've set out for yourself, and a sensitivity analysis, which gets into the impact on your budget if more or fewer meals are served in any given summer. This resource can be downloaded and filled out using information from your own summer meals program. Please feel free to take it and to use it, and let us know if you have any questions about it. The next section on planning your program is really about selecting target opportunities. These are resources that you can use to get at this information: our school data, the USDA capacity builder, or information from the state agency. At its root, it's looking at the opportunity to reach children, the density, evaluating the density and the presence of children, and seeing if there really is a market to serve SFSP reimbursable meals, and if you're able to balance the costs associated with program operations. And also looking at the need by identifying areas that are either currently not served or only partially served by existing sites. There's a great list of questions within this section to help you determine site locations as well as specific considerations for rural communities. Also, there's an assessment tool to help you look at the opportunity to work with partners and to leverage additional resources by asking a couple of key questions, such as what resources do partners bring to the table and how can they help us connect to more children? And also looking at opportunities and best practices around serving meals by selecting vendors, looking at the identifying vendors that have an appropriate capacity to serve meals, crafting an effective RFP to support your program, and then also if you were a self-prep site, thinking about some of those considerations as well. And finally, thinking about best practices, really about identifying various options for securing or utilizing vehicles to find the right ride to deliver your program, staffing your program, making sure that you have the different roles covered, such as program manager, coordinator, driver, site monitor, and food preparation, conducting outreach to make sure people are aware of your program so you can create demand for the program, forecasting service needs and managing fluctuations to meet demand, and then reflecting on program successes and challenges and identifying opportunities so that you can evaluate and improve the program moving forward to plan for the year after and the year after that. So we've really moved through a lot of things today. We've looked at the what, the why, the how, and stories from the field. We've reviewed the Mobile Meals Playbook resource, and now we want to turn it over to you folks with the time remaining and look at the questions and answers section. And these may be questions that we answer directly, and there may be questions that we work with our sponsors. So to make sure that folks know how the question and answer session works, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie.
Hi, y'all. Just wanted to reiterate what I said in the beginning. So please feel free to use the question box and enter in your questions for us. Also, we will be circulating the slides and the recording in an email later this week. So keep an eye out for that. You will have access to be able to print off those slides, listen to this recording, which I know a lot of you are very interested in doing. So to dive into the questions, we have a question from Jeff. He is asking, is the No Kid Hungry Center for Best Practices managing a database of all mobile meal programs for 2017?
I wouldn't say that we have a database for all programs. We do have states in which we operate campaigns where we have access to, I certainly wouldn't call it exhaustive information, but we do have information about a lot of things that are happening in states. One of the things that would make that difficult is that a lot of the aggregate data we have about programs is actually comes from USDA. They do not specifically track information about mobile meals in the applications that are administered by state agencies. And I guess another piece of that as well is that mobile meals really encompasses a wide variety of programs. We try to be aware of as many best practices as we can through our work directly with sponsors and with campaigns. But I would say we don't actually have an exhaustive list. And that would be difficult to track in the aggregate because the current data doesn't allow for it. But we are always interested in stories and encourage people to reach out to us with the innovative methods that they have seen or that they've implemented. So thanks, Jeff, for the question.
Okay, another question from Cheryl. How do you monitor the participants from taking the food away? Our biggest trouble at the locations we go into. Right.
So I'll say something briefly about this, and then I may see if one of our panelists has an idea. or other thoughts. You know, one of the things, and this is a key thing that we see across mobile meals and then also traditional sites, is that by providing some kind of activity or event at the site, that is often a best practice to make sure that folks are able to stay for the meal service, provides an incentive to stay, and provides structure around which to build the meal service to make it easier to monitor kids and make sure they're hanging around to eat. So, you know, whether it's a nutrition activity or a learning or an enrichment, we generally see, and we also see in the mobile meals world, that if there is some kind of structure and activity that makes that job a little bit easier, that's one piece of it. And then I would love to just open that up to our panelists and see if they have any specific ideas about, you know, Jody, Brian, Clint, or Scott, what you've seen or what you do to try to, you know, work within the bounds of the congregate meal requirement while also delivering mobile meals.
Derek, I can chime in. It's Jody in Arundel County. I think what we often do, I mean, that activity piece is key, like you mentioned, but we often have one or two parents that do come to the site, and they might have additional family, you know, their family as well as other families. And we really try to have them be the community voice there for us and really say how important it is that the students do stay at the site. So I think just, you know, using your partners of the community members that are right there, because they know the students, and they, you know, once they understand our obstacle of keeping them there, I think it usually works quite nicely.
Thanks so much, Jody. Appreciate that. We have time for one more question. Stephanie, another one coming in. Oh, great. We just got another question here. And, you know, Jody, I wanted to ask you, go back to you real quickly, and then others to chime in. Talking about changing locations from one year to the next, you talked about at the beginning of the program there was some movement there. What was the kind of cost-benefit analysis, or what was the process to really assess, you know, the need to return to a site, or maybe to think about investing resources elsewhere in your program? So I'll start with Jody, and then if we have any of the other panelists that want to chime in.
For us, Derek, it was all participation. So I think once we saw the participation on that second bus was not, it wasn't even half of what we had on our first bus that we implemented. And we were also seeing maybe some lack of interest with our apartment complexes and our community agencies that we were going to. You know, we ran that summer out, but then knew at the end of the summer we would entertain a Higher Farms area, our food desert area, as well as that little void that we had in that northern tier. So participation first, and then really soliciting our partners in the schoolhouses that had, I think, a better handle on location of students and community partners, be it that apartment complex, one or two of those.
Thanks, Jody. Any of the other panelists want to weigh in on that, selecting site locations or making modifications?
Derek, this is Clint. I think for us, it really is a result of the community response that we get back, and we try to do some form of simple evaluation, or even if that is like the town hall that I talked about before, if we're getting a lot of response out of the community and they're saying, hey, that particular site, or in our language, that particular spoke is not the perfect place, and they have a lot of feedback on that, we try to listen to that. And so a lot of our decision to, when you're talking about changing a site location, is really a direct response from the community.
Thanks so much, Clint, and thanks again to all of our panelists today. Again, Brian Kiernan, Scott Gillies, Jody Risa, and Clint McKnight. Thanks to all of you for speaking today, and want to thank all of the rest of you for attending, for being our audience, and for being hopefully inspired by so many of the diversity of models that we've seen with mobile meals today. I want to invite you to join us next month for our webinar on schools as nutrition hubs, the business savvy strategy to reduce childhood hunger. This actually is a partnership webinar. It will be presented alongside the School Nutrition Foundation, and will not focus only on summer meals, but will also highlight the connection between summer meals and all of the other child nutrition programs and opportunities that food service providers and school districts have to strengthen their financial operations, to provide additional opportunities for employment to their staff, and to serve their communities with nutrition programs year-round. This webinar will take place on Wednesday, March 22nd at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. We will send out, as a follow-up to this webinar, an invitation to register for the Schools as Nutrition Hubs webinar. So thanks again today for joining us as we looked at the what, why, and how of mobile meals. heard stories from the field, and reviewed the Mobile Meals Playbook resource on the No Kid Hungry Center for Best Practices website. Have a great day. Thank you for your work to advance the cause of summer meals and to reach kids where they live, learn, and play in the summer months. And we hope you'll join us on Wednesday, March 22nd, for the next webinar in our Summer Meals series. Have a great day.